Equality rights. Marginal note, equality before and under law, and equal protection and benefit of law. 15. 1. Every individual is equal before and under the law, and has the right to the equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination, and, in particular, without discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. Marginal note, affirmative action programs. 2. Subsection 1. Does not preclude any law, program, or activity that has as its object the amelioration of conditions of disadvantaged individuals or groups, including those that are disadvantaged because of race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. End note. 85. Official languages of Canada. Marginal note. Official languages of Canada. 16. 1. English and French are the official languages of Canada and have equality of status and equal rights and privileges as to their use in all institutions of the Parliament and Government of Canada. Marginal note. Official languages of New Brunswick. 2. English and French are the official languages of New Brunswick and have equality of status and equal rights and privileges as to their use in all institutions of the legislature and government of New Brunswick. Marginal note. Advancement of status and use. 3. Nothing in this charter limits the authority of Parliament or a legislature to advance the equality of status or use of English and French. Marginal note. English and French linguistic communities in New Brunswick. 16.11. The English linguistic community and the French linguistic community in New Brunswick have equality of status and equal rights and privileges, including the right to distinct educational institutions and such distinct cultural institutions as are necessary for the preservation and promotion of those communities. Marginal note. Role of the legislature and government of New Brunswick. 2. The role of the legislature and government of New Brunswick to preserve and promote the status, rights, and privileges referred to in subsection 1 is affirmed. End note. 86. Marginal note. Proceedings of Parliament. 17. 1. Everyone has the right to use English or French in any debates and other proceedings of Parliament. End note. 87. Marginal note. Proceedings of New Brunswick Legislature. 2. Everyone has the right to use English or French in any debates and other proceedings of the legislature of New Brunswick. End note. 88. Marginal note. Parliamentary statutes and records. 18. 1. The statutes, records, and journals of Parliament shall be printed and published in English and French, and both language versions are equally authoritative. End note. 89. Marginal note. New Brunswick statutes and records. 2. The statutes, records, and journals of the legislature of New Brunswick shall be printed and published in English and French, and both language versions are equally authoritative. End note. 90. Marginal note. Proceedings in courts established by Parliament. 19. 1. Either English or French may be used by any person in, or in any pleading in or process issuing from, any court established by Parliament. End note. 91. Marginal note. Proceedings in New Brunswick courts. 2. Either English or French may be used by any person in, or in any pleading in or process issuing from, any court of New Brunswick. End note. 92. Marginal note. Communications by public with federal institutions. 20. 1. Any member of the public in Canada has the right to communicate with and to receive available services from any head or central office of an institution of the Parliament or Government of Canada in English or French, and has the same right with respect to any other office of any such institution, where a. There is a significant demand for communications with and services from that office in such language, or b. Due to the nature of the office, it is reasonable that communications with and services from that office be available in both English and French. Marginal note. Communications by public with New Brunswick institutions. 2. Any member of the public in New Brunswick has the right to communicate with and to receive available services from any office of an institution of the legislature or government of New Brunswick in English or French. Marginal note. Continuation of existing constitutional provisions. 21. Nothing in Section 16 to 20 abrogates or derogates from any right, privilege, or obligation with respect to the English and French languages, or either of them, that exists, or is continued by virtue of any other provision of the Constitution of Canada. End note. 93. Marginal note. Rights and privileges preserved. 22. Nothing in Section 16 to 20 abrogates or derogates from any legal or customary right or privilege acquired or enjoyed either before or after the coming into force of this charter with respect to any language that is not English or French. Minority language educational rights. Marginal note. Language of instruction. 23. 1. Citizens of Canada, A, whose first language learned and still understood is that of the English or French linguistic minority population of the province in which they reside, or B, who have received their primary school instruction in Canada in English or French, and reside in a province where the language in which they receive that instruction is the language of the English or French linguistic minority population of the province, have the right to have their children receive primary and secondary school instruction in that language in that province. End note. 94. Marginal note. Continuity of language instruction. 2. Citizens of Canada of whom any child has received or is receiving primary or secondary school instruction in English or French in Canada have the right to have all their children receive primary and secondary school instruction in the same language. Marginal note. Application where numbers warrant. 3. The right of citizens of Canada under subsections 1 and 2 to have their children receive primary and secondary school instruction in the language of the English or French linguistic minority population of a province, A, applies wherever in the province the number of children of citizens who have such a right is sufficient to warrant the provision to them out of public funds of minority language instruction, and B, includes where the number of those children so warrants the right to have them receive that instruction in minority language educational facilities provided out of public funds. Enforcement. Marginal note. Enforcement of guaranteed rights and freedoms. 24. 1. Anyone whose rights or freedoms, as guaranteed by this charter, have been infringed or denied may apply to a court of competent jurisdiction to obtain such remedy as the court considers appropriate and just in the circumstances. Marginal note. Exclusion of evidence bringing administration of justice into disrepute. 2. Where, in proceedings under subsection 1, a court concludes that evidence was obtained in a manner that infringed or denied any rights or freedoms guaranteed by this charter, the evidence shall be excluded if it is established that, having regard to all the circumstances, the admission of it in the proceedings would bring the administration of justice into disrepute. General. Marginal note. Aboriginal rights and freedoms not affected by charter. 25. The guarantee in this charter of certain rights and freedoms shall not be construed so as to abrogate or derogate from any Aboriginal treaty or other rights or freedoms that pertain to the Aboriginal peoples of Canada, including A. Any rights or freedoms that have been recognized by the Royal Proclamation of October 7, 1763, and B. Any rights or freedoms that now exist by way of land claims agreements, or may be so acquired. End note. 95. Marginal note. Other rights and freedoms not affected by charter. 26. The guarantee in this charter of certain rights and freedoms shall not be construed as denying the existence of any other rights or freedoms that exist in Canada. Marginal note. Multicultural heritage. 27. This charter shall be interpreted in a manner consistent with the preservation and enhancement of the multicultural heritage of Canadians. Marginal note. Rights guaranteed equally to both sexes. 28. Notwithstanding anything in this charter, the rights and freedoms referred to in it are guaranteed equally to male and female persons. Marginal note. Rights respecting certain schools preserved. 29. Nothing in this charter abrogates or derogates from any rights or privileges guaranteed by or under the Constitution of Canada in respect of denominational, separate or dissension schools. End note. 96. Marginal note. Application to territories and territorial authorities. 30. A reference in this charter to a province, or to the Legislative Assembly or Legislature of a province shall be deemed to include a reference to the Yukon Territory and the Northwest Territories, or to the appropriate legislative authority thereof, as the case may be. Marginal note: legislative powers not extended. 31. Nothing in this charter extends the legislative powers of any body or authority. Application of charter. Marginal note: application of charter. 32. 1. This charter applies a. to the Parliament and Government of Canada in respect of all matters within the authority of Parliament, including all matters relating to the Yukon Territory and Northwest Territories, and